What the Hell Tech listeners, I'm your host this week, Hayley Levene. This is the podcast where we tackle some of the trending topics, ideas and best practice in health and social care. This week, Paul and Lee are back on What the Hell Tech to discuss their big moments over the last decade as we celebrate our 10-year anniversary. The pair joined forces to create the company in December 2012, and if you were listening way back when the podcast first started, you'll know just how that went. So please listen back to that first episode and listen to the funny story around the first customer. We're going to be focusing today on the highs and lows, some things that you never knew, and what's in store for the company in the next 10 years. So a lot has happened over the past few months. We've had double the size of employees, we've doubled the company size, we have got lots of new partners that have come on board, you have been travelling all over the world, which I'd love to hear more about, and you featured on Sky News to discuss our recent investment. So do you actually ever get bored? Or do you enjoy all of this?
I don't know about enjoy all elements, but no. Yeah, it's busy time. It's a busy time for everybody. I mean, it has been phenomenal growth, which is great because it just means that, you know, we're having a bigger impact in the industry and working with more and more partners, stroke our customers. I never get bored. I love this thing. Like I said, I think it's just we're having such a positive impact. So I'm not sure what the actual question was, if I get time or I'm bored, but yeah, no. Busy times, but it's good busy, and I still love it. So yeah.
Good. Well, 10 years of it, I'd hope you love it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with the obvious, obviously 10 years. So start with you, Paul. What does 10 years mean to you?
I think we should say as well that there's been no preparation or sight of these questions. So I think 10 years is corroboration that it was the right thing to do, in many ways. That, you know, so Lee and I starting a company together, having this idea, wanting to make a difference, positive impact in healthcare, and it corroborates the view that it needed it, and it was the right thing to do. It's the right solution. So yeah, I think corroboration, and yeah, just, that would be what it means to me, the 10 years.
And you, Lee, 10 years?
I think for me, probably grey hair to start off with, because I certainly never had 10 years ago. I think it's that you managed to get to 10 years when you start out, when you're working on your kitchen table, is an achievement in itself. I think it means to me that we're bringing the right people into the business, because you can't keep working from a kitchen table. So making sure you've got the right people in the business that's what it means to me, because we couldn't have kept doing what we were doing just ourselves, because we don't know everything, we can't do everything. So, and I think that's probably something you learn over the 10 years.
So talking about the kitchen table, when you were doing that initially and coming up with the idea around Radar Healthcare, could you have imagined, like today, back then? I'll start with you, Lee.
No. In lots of different ways. I think it's interesting because we'd never ran a business before, done a startup anyway. And you're doing a business plan, you do this business plan, it's like a 3-year business plan, and you kind of you're like that, basically. Because of course you are, because you're not going to say you're going to do that. And actually, it is kind of the normal kind of hockey stick that you go where it's slow, and then all of a sudden it picks up, and then it picks up massively as it has done over the last 2 years. So no, you don't. I don't think you even think more than 3 years ahead. And certainly then when you get investors, it's a 3-year plan that you're working at all the time. So 10 years has gone very quickly. So no idea we'd still be here in 10 years. And the first business plan was a 3-year business plan. So I think 3 years is the maximum you ever think ahead.
Mm.
Probably rightly so as well, because there's so many changes, certainly within health and social care. It's quite dynamic. So if you look at us as a business, we're always evolving and developing, even from a product perspective, how we engage, how we understand the people we bring in. So I think probably 3 years is all you would ever have. And likewise for me, that was no is the answer. But you step back and you kind of squint your eyes and you visualise, wouldn't it be fantastic if we can have this super great impact on all these lots and lots of customers? So yes, I hoped and kind of imagined, but didn't expect it. That would be the kind of response.
What about like health tech? Because obviously 10 years ago, health tech was in a different place. It's become more widely adopted, I guess, now. So did you imagine that actually technology would become so important back then?
That for me?
Yeah.
Yes. If you go back to the start of this, it was, health and social care was in desperate need of this, of the kind of systems that Radar Healthcare delivers to them. And it was, that readiness and need was there. So I think I always expected that there would be adoption of systems like Radar Healthcare because it makes perfect sense. And then obviously with events over the last few years and the pandemic and COVID, that's been a catalyst for accelerating adoption. So we've seen that, and obviously you see great tech evolving over the last 10 years, which has been incredible.
Did you expect it, Lee, or did you think that it might be a slow start?
I think when you look at it, other industries were probably ahead of healthcare in terms of adoption of technology, so it was always going to happen. But I think health tech now is starting to overtake a lot of other areas in terms of how technology is used. When you look at some of the innovation that's going on, some of it's mind blowing. So I would say it was always going to happen. I would say probably the last 3 years, and as Paul was talking about the pandemic, I think that's accelerated it massively. So yeah, I think it was always going to happen, but the slow adoption of health tech in healthcare settings has massively sped up. And I think that in the next few years it will be way ahead of lots of other industries.
I think it's the type of technology as well. So healthcare technology has kind of been around for a long time, but it's been focused on kind of sexy tech or specific specialisms or surgery like a Da Vinci's robot or something like that. Whereas people are now saying, well, actually the commodity activities where you can have the biggest impact. So, and that's where people are now starting to see actually system-wide, you can apply systems, software, technology to help you spend more time on the delivery of care. So that's probably a big change.
I think you see a lot on the clinical side, don't you? Like clinical notes and things like that. But the other part of it makes such a big impact, really, doesn't it? So, Lee, proudest moment from the last 10 years?
I think probably for me it goes back to kind of year 2, probably, and that's when we got our first client actually using a system, because that's a massive moment, because you've kind of gone from this point of this is what we think somebody might want to actually it kind of was and wasn't, and then this is what we built, and then to actually get them using it and seeing them using it and seeing them how they use it, that was probably the biggest moment, because obviously everything from that point has grew. And again, that was at that point was just me and Paul, so we'd kind of done everything up to that point, and you've seen some of the stuff that we did, some of the early marketing and some of the early stuff that came out. So yeah, I think to get to that point where you've kind of said we've had this idea, we've found some investment, we've built something, and now somebody's actually using it and it's making a difference. That's where that's where this journey really started, because if we would have got that first bit wrong, we'd have probably fell off a cliff. So we were lucky to get those early adopters, get them using the system, and then kind of went on from there. So for me, that's probably the proudest moment.
Paul?
I reiterate that it's incredible achievement, just that early customer. So I suppose there's two elements for me. One is I'm proud that the people that came with us on the early days are still here. So, some of our very first employees are still in the business. That's kind of cool. But more recent, actually, that was, so my daughter works in healthcare, and she'd moved and was working for an organisation, and she sent me a WhatsApp picture, and she was having a Radar Healthcare training, which I thought was kind of cool that, my daughter was working in healthcare and that company was using the software platform, and so that was kind of a proud moment.
Proud dad moment.
Yeah, proud dad.
Okay, and going back to the business side then, what's been the biggest surprise to you, Paul, around owning a business? Like, what did you just not expect? All of it.
Well, not only have I not got grey hair, I've got no hair, and I had a full plume of hair prior to this. No, I didn't.
It was afro.
Yeah. I think it's the it's probably the kind of day-to-day operational elements that you have to deal with to be a sustainable and, efficient business. Because if you're not, you ultimately you just want to get this piece of software, this technology into the partner's hands so that you can make a difference. They start deriving the benefits. But there's so much goes on in the background. And like Lee said about bringing people in, key people in, it's so important, getting the right people around you. And I think that's, for me, was a surprise. You think that you recruiting somebody that has a job title will satisfy that function. And it's really difficult to get the right people. And as you know, we're a huge thing around culture in our organisation as well. And so you've got a right culture, right fit, right skill set, right attitude.
Right time.
Right time, yeah, it's a good point.
Took lots of people.
That for me is the big surprise.
Yeah.
People is a big challenge in day-to-day operational.
It's interesting actually, because people often are the biggest challenge as well. Like things you expect or the way you might handle something isn't the way someone else might take something.
Yeah.
So you have to really adapt the way you speak to people, the way you handle situations and things like that. Has that been, I'm going off topic here, but has that been kind of difficult, would you say, throughout your time?
Not this difficult. I think, again, it's not that surprised me, but it's a lesson. Like Lee said, you're learning all the time. You learn lots of lessons. I think in the early days, because you're doing everything, you've got lots of hats, you kind of recognise it's probably not the best way to do some of the things, but it's your way. And then I think realising that different people have different views and that you're not always right, and that's part of our culture, just being open and letting people have a voice and, and trust. So, yeah, I think it's, you just got to be, they say about being a people's person, but yeah, I think that's what we are. We just got to listen and give people the room to have their voice and then implement those things. It's challenging though.
Yeah, I can imagine. Julio, one of our new, as you know, but our listeners might not, one of our developers, he was on a podcast recently and he talked about the culture in the development team being all about being able to be open and just, come up with an idea, even if it sounds stupid. And I think that is shown throughout every single team in the business, and everyone you speak to at Radar Healthcare always says that. So I think you're doing a good job, Paul.
Good.
And Lee, what about you? What surprised you the most?
How much you don't know, probably, because we both had held fairly senior positions in big technology companies before. But when it's your own business and you're starting it and there's two of you, you have to do everything. So you're doing account, you're doing literally everything. Searching for offices, leases, payroll, literally everything. And it's how much you don't know and probably how many mistakes you make along the way. So we've made lots of mistakes that if you did start again, you wouldn't do it, but you'd make other mistakes. And I think, just how much there is to understand, and it's just, and actually as you grow, it doesn't really get any easier, because there's then other things that come along. So it's not as if now we've got 80 people in the business. We're not worrying about the things we did when we had 10. We're worrying about something else, and so it's kind of it's changing. So what your focus is changes, because you get people in that takes that focus away from something that you were maybe managing before, good or not so good. You get somebody in, hopefully, that comes and looks after that. Your attention then goes somewhere else. So that's, for me, you're constantly changing of what your focus is. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. Because you think, we'll have 80 people. It's easy now. We'll just sit back and let people get on with it. And it's just not the way it goes. Yeah. So you still have. I was on holiday a couple of weeks ago and then kind of sat in my shorts on a call with Qatar, because that's what you do.
Yeah.
So you think, oh well, we don't have to do that. We've got 80 people, but it's just the way it is because it's your business. So you don't really let it go.
I suppose you can't, can you? It's yours. I couldn't. So I understand that, but it must be hard. And I guess once you hire someone, you think great, but then you might find a hole in something and you're like, oh my God, well, I never noticed this because I was focusing on this. And it's a good thing though, because it shows you where your priority should be, doesn't it? So.
And there's always something you can do better.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how well your company is functioning, there's always something you can do better.
Yeah. So thinking about, I guess, the struggles and some of the difficult times, have you ever thought about quitting at all?
It's not an option, is it? So, quitting isn't an option. You've put so much effort into to get to where you are, whether that's to get to where you are after 6 months or 6 years or 10 years. It's not an option. And certainly as you grow and you see the impact that we're having, then yeah, I'm not going to say it's easy because it's certainly not easy, but no, it's certainly no chance of quitting. Yeah.
What about you?
Constantly. You just, as Lee said, it's not an option, so it doesn't come into your thought process. Simple as that. You've got to. It's not that, and as you grow, you become responsible for people as well and their livelihoods, and then, as Lee said, you're having this positive impact on health and social care. Why would you even think about quitting? It's just how do we do more, and be bigger, better at what we do.
Yeah. So, like, looking back to your younger self, when you had not grey hair, if you could have told yourself, like, one thing about where the business was going to go, say, I don't know, the number of partners we have around the world, or the impact that you might have had on something, or as simple as, like, the fact that you might have won awards, or whatever that would be, what would you tell yourself? I'll start with you, Paul.
Do you mean that? I'm not sure I follow the question. Do you mean it if it's something I tell myself to be aware of, or a lesson learned, or
no, just something to maybe ease the worry of opening your own business?
I think, look, to have a snapshot at the 10 years where we are now, to have a snapshot, 80 plus people coming soon to be 90s or whatever, as we're growing, and, international client, just have a snapshot of knowing that was a success. And then looking at all the partners and customers we have, just to have a snapshot of all of that. And then to see these, the testimonials. When you read them, I just love reading them. Game changer. So glad we bought this. This is the right partner. Yeah, that would be great. Then you'd say, right, I can relax. I can deal with all the speed bumps and hurdles.
And you, Lee?
Yeah, similar. I think for me, it's when you're a bit smaller, you probably worry about the small things that are not really going to make a massive difference. So I think that's probably for me, you just don't sweat the small stuff, because really spend your time and effort and focus on the things that are going to have an actual impact, because you can kind of end up down a bit of a rabbit hole and sweat the small stuff and spend a lot of time on it, and actually it doesn't really have an impact.
Do you have an example of something where you have got a bit stressed over something that maybe you probably wouldn't have done now?
There's lots of them, but I can't think of them because I don't sweat the small stuff anymore. So I don't. Yeah, there's so many, because you might get something that you've done that you wouldn't. It hasn't had the impact or the outcome that you expected. Whether that's a piece of development or a function or a feature or whatever that might be, and you can worry about it, but actually you can fix it in 2 weeks. So does it actually really matter, and is it worth spending your time and effort worrying about it? Because the way we develop the product is taking that as an example, is we do 2 weekly sprints. So if something isn't quite right, or it doesn't quite have the outcome that we expected, we can fix it in 2 weeks. So you need to kind of step away a bit and just kind of take a bit of a bigger picture. So yeah, sweating the small stuff is definitely hard, and especially when in those early days, because you don't have the resource and you're not as agile, and you're not doing things as quickly as you maybe like. So yeah, just stepping back a bit.
So someone said to me recently that being a business owner is a really lonely place to be. Sometimes, you don't always have someone to talk to. Obviously, you've got each other, which is different, but you can't always talk to people. You don't get a pat on the back when you've done a good job. You just have to get on with it and stuff like that. Do you find that sometimes it is a bit lonely being an owner? I'll start with you.
No, not really. I think it's down to personal circumstance. Lee and I have worked together for a long, long time. As he alluded to, working in technology companies where we were in the same management team. Played football, been friends. So we've got a good friendship that underpins our kind of business relationship. And then it's your network. It's, we've got a fortunate group of friends that will listen to you have a little bit of a bitch and a moan that, about your woes and things like that. So no, I don't. And then as we've grown and we have our own, our SMT, all the employees, because of that open culture and dialogue that exists. Actually, I can have a conversation with anybody and have a little bit, share my problems and get their views, regardless who they are. So no. Do you?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's ever been a lonely existence. But it's definitely, as Paul was mentioning there, having the right people in the kind of senior management team means that we can talk to people about anything we want, really, because I think we've all got a good trust between ourselves, and that's massive, really, because we can hopefully, and hopefully everyone agrees with this, that we can have open and honest conversations with people. So yeah, no, it's never been an issue for me, and as Paul said, we've always worked closely together anyway. So
yeah,
probably maybe if you were by yourself, it might be slightly different. But when you set a business up as two people, you kind of share that load.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So obviously, speaking about you two being friends, so Lee, can you tell me an embarrassing story about Paul?
Christ. Probably not. Not broadcastable.
No, I've got some good pictures from our early days when we. I've got one of him asleep on a train with his mouth open. I think I've got that somewhere.
Okay, you need to send it me.
Yeah, and you've seen the picture of him with the cakes. Our first show. I can't remember what that was. Some ambulance show somewhere, wasn't it? It was so long ago with our first stand but yeah, other things we will keep between ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, a funny story. Have you got a funny story?
There's several, I suppose. I think I told it. I'll try and make it very brief, but after we'd got our kind of first round of investment, I was at an event down in London, and basically it was a charity around survivors of terrorism attacks, and as part of it there was an auction for a very exclusive painting that had been hung up at the White House, 10 Downing Street, around the world, and it was a silent auction, and I'd wrote on a piece of paper 200 dash, and I put it into the blind auction, and about 20 minutes after all the bids are in, and they're going to announce the winner, the kind of comparing couple came across to me and right in front of everybody on this table said, "We just want to say thank you so much for your generosity," and literally pointing out, "This is the guy," and I was like, I started to go white as sweat. I think I was messaging Lee, the investment we've got, I think I've just spent £200,000 on a painting. I was terrified, but they announced it. I've never written a cheque for £200 so quick in my life. So we nearly didn't, we might have now been no business, just this one painting.
So would your friendship have lasted if he'd have given £200,000?
I'm sure that
mine would have done.
I'm sure we would have got. I would have split it in half.
Well, at least you stayed friends. It's fine. So outside of your first customer, is there one memory that stood out to you in the last 10 years? I'll start with you, Lee.
One memory. Lots of memories. Are we talking good or bad memories here?
Could be anything. Maybe a good one. Be positive.
I think it changes all the time. So when we had our kind of summer social to see 70 odd people there, and a lot of them getting to meet for the first time because we work fairly remotely now. Although we do have two offices, you generally don't catch up with people that much. And certainly after COVID as well. So pre-COVID, we were in the office maybe 2 or 3 days a week, and you would get to see people quite a lot. But then kind of going there, and especially the growth we've had over this year, probably then meeting all of those people for the first time. That's a memory, if you like, because it was just so different. Because you're used to meeting people in the office or a lot of these people I'd only met on a Teams call, and some not at all. So yeah, to meet them all together was great, and just see people getting together was great as well.
It's weird when you see people on Teams and then in person you're like, wow, you're really tall. I bet you got that a lot.
I get that a lot, yeah.
I get that a lot as well.
And you, Paul, what have you got in memory?
There's probably lots of memory. I think there's one. It's kind of a chain of events that. So my cat, these always stick in my mind. We went from kitchen table, dining room table, to a small incubator office on the university in York.
And we met some funny people in there.
Yeah, we really did. We had some, the lessons learned. Not
Yeah.
naming names.
Yeah.
But yeah, you should have seen our digital marketing prior to that. But, and then going from that office and taking an office in Leeds, in the centre of Leeds, we had this office. And then we went from that office to a bigger office in Leeds. And then you get a bigger office, and then you open an office in London. And it's, we should never be ashamed of success, because it is it's a direct result of that we're getting more partners and having an even bigger impact in health and social care. So we celebrate our success, and those kind of stick with me as to those memories of facing Lee across a dining room table to a 4-desk pod to 12 desks to whatever it might be, and then, as Lee said, and then you're suddenly having a summer social. So it's like a memory of growth.
I think it's our success isn't just our success, is it? We're making such an impact on our partners that it's their success too, and that's what
absolutely.
we try and do.
Yeah.
And just to finish, so give me 3 things that you want to be able to say when I bring you back here in 10 years' time and ask you these same questions again. I'll start with you, Lee.
10 years' time? I just said I can only think 3 years ahead.
Well, give it a go.
So in 10 years' time, what will I be? I'll be 53. I'll be 53, so I'll be probably much greyer, full head of grey. God, it'll be such a different world again in 10 years.
Yeah.
If you think about what the amount of things that have happened in the last 10 years, where we'll be in 10 years' time, who knows? It'll be totally different again. You would imagine, and there's certainly the way that in terms of kind of the health tech and everything else, it's going to expand massively. I see it being a much more open kind of landscape. So everything, you see things now around open EHR, which will be massive. To have open protocols that allow systems to talk to each other and will be massive. So 10 years time, absolutely no idea. I'd like to think that the business is still here, it's still growing, we're still providing the service that we do. Will everyone still be here? Probably not. Will the SMT be here? Not everybody will be there. Hopefully people will have moved on to bigger and better things, because that's what we want people to do. Will I still be here in 10 years? Who knows? Yes, I have absolutely no idea. We've just done another 3-year plan, so I've got more focus on that than 10 years.
Paul?
It's a kind of a similar thing. It's a difficult question. I think if I was here, I won't be 53. I'll be 64. So coming to official retirement. So I would be saying, my things would be saying, are you coming to my retirement party? Isn't it fantastic that we are the UK's leading, provider of this kind of system that Radar Healthcare is recognised as, as the leading provider, because I know the positive impact it has. And then probably finding, I'm still here, fighting and kicking and fighting.
Okay, this isn't on my questions, but I do want to ask, if you could see one change in the next 10 years in the healthcare industry, what would it be? I'll start with you, Paul.
Mine would be that for once that these initiatives, which they are well thought out, and they are honourable and the right things to do. Sometimes they're not executed for many, many reasons, but for me it would be that the ICS, the integrated care system model, worked. That we get something that everybody buys into, and we properly integrate social care with the NHS, because they're intrinsically linked and they compound each other. If we could find a way to get those things to work together, I think we'd address health inequalities, reduce waiting lists, get back to elective care, etc., 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 and then improved quality of life. But there's lots to be done around that. So that would be me. Equality across social care and NHS.
Yeah. And Lee?
For me, it's so politicised, healthcare, that nothing ever gets done properly because it's only short term. You can only look at the term of a parliament, 4 or 5 years. And you get to that point, government changes, policy changes. How are you supposed to implement something that needs to be done across the whole health and social care? How can you ever do it in 4 years when at the end of that 4 years it might change again? So politics needs to be taken out of it, and there needs to be some cross-party agreement that this is what we need to do with health and social care, and everybody buys into it, and it's for 10 years, not 2 years or 4 years, or the way it is in politics at the moment, 2 weeks, because it's changing that quickly. So how are people supposed to implement changes for the better if it's constantly if the politics around it changes? For me, if we don't do that, nothing will change.
Big question, but how do you do that?
Absolutely no idea. Because we won't get into politics, but it's such a differing view between the two main parties that how do they ever come to a consensus of what needs to happen?
I think that's its traction as well, because there isn't that continuity, and it isn't even just that one party's in power for a long period of time. It's individuals coming and want to make a stamp and make a change that it's really difficult to get that continuity until you can ring fence and say, regardless of the government, this is the
10-year strategy, and we're not going to deviate from it.
Yeah,
because it doesn't happen like that.
Yeah.
You've got a 10-year strategy, a 3-year strategy elsewhere, and then this is changing. You've got names changing.
Exactly. Yeah. It's impossible for the health service and that whole integrated health and social care thing to happen while it's changing so frequently.
So many people involved, though, isn't there?
Yeah.
Too many cooks sometimes, isn't there?
Yeah. If you think about the NHS, probably one of the, if not the biggest employer in the UK, and to sort of change the way that they operate, it's massive. You can't do that in a few years. It's 10, 15, 20 years. It just never happens because it changes so often.
I've just remembered a funny thing. I don't know if you want to have it in at the end.
Yeah, go on.
Down in Harley Street, when we first, in the early days, we were with Harley Street Hair Clinic and all these kind of things. But I just remember on the cosmetic surgery place. It said on the other sign on the thing saying, if life gives you lemons, a small operation can give you melons. Which I thought was quite funny.
Clever marketing.
Anyway, you might want to cut that one.
No, that's a good story. Good end to the podcast. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight into the journey over the past 10 years into Paul and Lee and what they're like. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we'll see. But no, thank you so much for joining us this week, and thank you to everyone for listening. Next week, we have the first part of a Christmas and New Year special, so listen in to find out more. And if you've got any questions for us, for our guest, for Paul Lee, then please email whatthehealthtech@radarhealthcare.com. Thank you.